Everyone had always said Alice was the sensible one, the girl who never got swept away too easily. Maybe that's why, when Nicholas first crossed her path in college, she barely gave him a second glance. Sure, he had this effortless charm that turned heads, and yeah, her friends teased her, secretly wishing they were the ones catching his eye. But to Alice, Nick was odd. Endearing in a weird way, but odd nonetheless. Funny how life has a way of making you second guess yourself. Their paths kept crossing. Accidental meetings, study groups, late night cafeteria runs. And little by little, Alice started to notice things she hadn't before. A kindness that ran deeper than surface manners. A heart that didn't just beat, it poured. What once felt quirky now felt rare. Real. And before she knew it, she was falling for the boy she had once dismissed without a second thought. By the time their graduation cap sailed through the air, Nick and Alice were inseparable. The kind of couple others envied quietly but couldn't quite resent. 3 years later, when Nicholas knelt down with a ring and trembling hope in his eyes, Alice said yes without hesitation. They decided to savor their time together before diving into the chaos of parenthood, a choice that made sense to them but baffled their parents, who found every excuse to hint or outright complain about grandkids. They laughed it off. It was easier to joke than explain themselves over and over. Not long after, Alice landed a job through a relative's connection, managing operations at a nearby factory. It wasn't glamorous, but it was challenging in all the right ways, demanding her full attention and rewarding her with a deep sense of growth. No 2 days ever looked the same, and even when she dragged herself home drained, her spirit buzzed with stories she couldn't wait to share with Nick over dinner. One night, between bites of pasta and easy laughter, Alice mentioned an upcoming 3-week business trip to the capital. She'd stay with an old classmate, she said casually, shooting him a small, apologetic grin. Sorry to leave you to manage everything alone. I'll make it up to you when I get back, I promise. Nick smiled, pride and a quiet loneliness flickering inside him. He was proud. So proud. But the thought of 3 empty weeks without her gnawed at the edges of his happiness. By the end of that week, Alice was on a plane, her heart both excited and heavy. In the capital, her friend Jane and Jane's partner Nate met her at the airport with wide smiles and tight hugs. Years had passed, but it felt like no time at all. Work hit her like a tidal wave. Endless meetings, urgent tasks, days that left her too exhausted to even finish brushing her hair before passing out cold. Jane tried to carve out moments for them to reconnect, but schedules clashed and exhaustion won more often than not. Still, one night, a crack formed. You off today? Nate asked over a lazy breakfast. Alice nodded, sipping her coffee. Let's go out tonight, he said, too casual. Grab drinks, chill a little. Jane shrugged. Yeah, why not? Alice smiled, grateful for a chance to unwind. That night, after too many half-argued movie picks and just enough drinks to blur the edges of the evening, they finally settled into the living room. Laughter floated through the air. Warmth buzzed in her skin. But underneath it all, a strange restlessness gnawed at her. Somewhere between the movie's opening credits and the first act, her eyelids grew heavy. She let herself drift, the sounds of laughter and background noise fading into a soft hum. When Alice stirred awake, something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Blinking into the darkness, she realized she wasn't alone on the couch. Nate's arms were wrapped around her like steel cables. Panic shot through her veins. She shifted to move, but his grip only tightened. A hot breath brushed her ear. Shh, he whispered, low and urgent. The haze of alcohol clouded her mind, but fear ripped through it like a knife. His hands, where they shouldn't be, moved over her with slow, calculated pressure. Alice froze. Every cell screamed, but she stayed paralyzed, trapped between disbelief and terror. By morning, no one spoke of it, as if it hadn't happened at all. Alice told herself it had been a mistake, a misunderstanding. Nothing technically happened, not something she could easily explain. And the thought of telling Nicholas? It made her stomach twist into knots. When she finally returned home, Nick was waiting at the arrivals gate, clutching a bright bouquet and a lopsided smile that made her chest ache. He wrapped her in a hug that should have felt like safety, but instead shattered something inside her. "I missed you so much," he murmured into her hair, and right there in his arms, guilt crashed over her. Thick, drowning, irrevocable. Days later, Nicholas's phone buzzed with an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Hi, who's this? He asked, frowning. "It's Jane," came the shaky reply. He straightened, every nerve suddenly on edge. Her voice teetered on the edge of something fragile, filled with questions that felt oddly personal and unsettling. After a few minutes of awkward small talk, Jane cut the charade. "Nate and I broke up," she said flatly. "I'm sorry to hear that," Nick said, though he was barely following. Jane exhaled sharply and the words tumbled out in a breathless rush. It wasn't just a breakup. Nate had been someone else entirely when she wasn't looking. Girls from bars. Secrets dragged into their home. Nick's chest tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Silence. Then, barely above a whisper. "Because there's something you don't know. Something she won't ever tell you." Nicholas ended the call before she could say more. But the words lodged themselves deep inside him, a slow-burning poison he couldn't shake. That night, over dinner, Nick poured a glass of wine for Alice, something he rarely did without occasion. She raised an eyebrow, bemused, and smiled. But there was a stiffness to her shoulders that hadn't been there before. As they ate, Nick told a story. Not his story, a friend's. A betrayal. A marriage hollowed out by secrets. His tone was light, casual, but his eyes never left hers. Alice listened quietly, her face a perfect, unreadable mask. When her phone buzzed mid-meal, her hand trembled as she reached for it. One message. "I told your husband everything and then some. Jane." Her blood turned to ice. Slowly, Alice lifted her gaze to meet Nick's. In that single glance, the truth between them cracked wide open. "What did she send?" Nick asked, voice low but sharp enough to cut. Tears blurred Alice's vision. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words brittle and meaningless. She pushed back her chair in panic, but Nick reached across the table, a single hand stopping her retreat. His touch was gentle, devastating. "Is there something you want to tell me?" he asked, voice almost too soft. Alice nodded, trembling, but no words came. None that would fix this. Silence swallowed them whole. Finally, Nick stood. "I'll leave," he said, his voice even, final. And just like that, the home they had built, the dreams they had spun, crumbled into dust. He packed a small bag, barely looking at her as he left. The apartment, gifted by Alice's parents, stayed behind like a mausoleum to a life that could have been. The divorce was swift, cold, final. In the months that followed, Alice tried to stitch her life back together, but every thread frayed at her touch. Dating became a cruel joke, every connection slipping away before it could take root. Friends she'd once counted on ghosted her one by one, their trust shattered. The only refuge left was work, a sterile treadmill she ran on just to stay upright. But when the sun sank and the empty apartment swallowed her again, the weight returned. That's when the wine bottles came out. Glass after glass, she tried to drown the voice inside her, the one whispering of everything she'd lost, everything she'd thrown away. But no matter how much she drank, she couldn't escape the bitter truth. Every night, Alice sat alone by the window, her reflection flickering against the glass, and a stranger's face staring back, and no matter how long she stared, she couldn't find the girl she used to be. If you felt even a fraction of Alice's regret, if you've ever wondered how a single moment can unravel a lifetime of love, don't look away now. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments. Have you ever faced a moment that changed everything? Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Remind them, loyalty isn't just about staying, and it's about choosing. every day, even when no one's watching. Because sometimes the life you lose isn't stolen, it's handed away,